another episode of your favorite Tiago's frozen right off the line.
Piece of shit.
We're live, and as you've heard, something is a piece of shit.
That's a good.
They'll jump right back in. This is good stuff, though. You know, I was just talking to Ryan about the challenges of going live like this, and you just got to work through it. Rudy, what's up, man?
How's it going, guys?
It's going. We're 3/4 of the way there.
Yeah, we're almost.
Yeah, happy Tuesday, everybody. This is episode 12, and Thiago is having some technical difficulties, but we'll be right back here shortly. So
Rudy, tell us what's going on. What's going on in the gym? How's things going? What's new?
Good. Fighters are training right now. It's going to be a big May for my team, so excited for May. I get to take an hour off of training them right now, though. That's always a plus.
How big is the fight team?
It's smaller than past years. Pandemic did a little bit of that to us, and then during the pandemic, I had a kid. So I have a 3-year-old now. Priorities are slightly different. I can't just do every show everywhere I want anymore. I'm more selective, so that means I'm more selective on who I want to train, who gets fights. So, there's a time when I had probably 20 plus active fighters, and now it's more like probably 10 active fighters. So,
So when there's a lot of events that pop up, what's to go to?
Repeat that question, Ryan, one more time. You cut out.
Okay, I said there's quite a bit of opportunities now to compete. Especially since you're pressed for time and you really have to prioritize your time. I think everybody does. What do you look for in an event?
Well, I look for the
choose to register.
Yep, I look for the quality of the event, right? Obviously there's different levels. If there's a local show, I try to support the local shows as much as possible. But if it means for traveling, then usually I'm traveling majority just for my pros. But for amateurs, again, it's got to be a quality show. It's got to be a quality tournament. I did a couple of tournaments last year that I wasn't crazy about. So I'm like, man, if I'm going to leave the gym business for a week and be away from a kid for 5 days, it's got to be, something that we're going to get, something out of, not just maybe one fight or just for anything. So it's got to be quality. That's the most important thing.
So we can imagine what those who haven't been to a tournament, what a quality event would look like. Everybody's seen polished events. What does a crappy one look like? Give me experience of you going to a bad event that you're like, I will never.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say any names.
You don't have to drag anybody.
Don't want to burn any bridges. But yeah, I mean, one, especially for tournaments, first and foremost, you want to make sure that your fighters have matches. You're hoping more than one, right? Obviously, some weight classes, some smaller ladies, there's less competition out there, so you're okay if you can get one fight, that's good. And then it's just how it's run, if it's efficient. All right, or do they start on time, do they end on time? How easy it is to know when you're on deck and so forth. Those all play factors in it. And I, like I said, I did a tournament earlier last year and just didn't have that. I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna do that one again.
Just like added some extra stress to an already stressful situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tournaments are work, man. Especially, it depends on if you can bring coaches out and so forth. And it's like, okay, if all of a sudden you have to start helping with the management of that tournament and stuff like that, it's just not something you want to do. You want to just focus on your team, look up, check when these guys are on deck, when they're ready to go, and go. I'm happy that I did the US Muay Thai last year, and it was a great tournament. I really enjoyed it.
So obviously, we're organizers, and when we put these things together, we're always trying to find a way to make it better for the attendees? You know, what are some things that we could do that you feel will make it better for all coaches in the same position you are?
I mean, it must, obviously put on, right? Like if you have, two, 800 athletes, depending on the size of the tournament. I mean, just the logistics alone are hard. I remember I was really pleased with just you guys throwing everything on time. I could go check where we were in the lineup, and everything was what it was said to be. There weren't all of a sudden, oh, this match is thrown in, so you're bumped back, or all of a sudden these matches fell out, so all of a sudden you're right up. So, I mean, I think as everyone progresses and technology progresses, is there the way to check on your phone? Like, okay, there's a list of the bouts coming up, so you don't have to run back and forth and so forth like that. That obviously helps.
Very cool. So, Diago, we got Diago back here. The topic of
Sorry
today.
about that, guys. I had some technical difficulty. My computer decided to update right as we started the show. Just said, you know what? I'm gonna do it right now, just because I feel like it. So, sorry, Rudy. But what have we discussed? Have we talked about?
No, we were not
sandbagging
even.
yet?
We were not going into the sandbagging.
I want to go right into the sandbag.
I didn't even show the title yet.
So
we didn't even get to
I've
it.
heard Rudy. I remember, man. He would come out almost every 6 months and be like, "I'm gonna repost about the booklet because if we have the booklet, then people can sandbag, and if everybody uses it, and so go into that a little bit. Talk to me about the booklet solution and why you think that's a good one."
Well, I think as a proponent, I've been a proponent of that for some time, just because, there's so many different organizations in the U.S. and the U.S. is so big, and it's really hard to keep track. Each organization sometimes it's hard to keep track of the fighters within their organization, right? So,
Right.
if you're jumping around from different sanctioning bodies, different states, different commissions, and you want to do some research on an opponent, or even before you agree on a matchmaking, you want to know all the information is there. And just for years, I've had to cross-reference like different websites, like, oh, this person says they're this on this website. There's this many fights on this side. It's like, how do you really know, right?
Right.
And just obviously USA Boxing is a little bit different situation, but they're able to do it. They go to an event, they get it stamped, and the next time they go to an event, get it stamped, and they can't falsify that, right?
Right. So what I've seen, and it's something that I've kind of worked on a little bit too, was there's a software out there, and I think New York started doing this, where the state is mandating that you use it. All sanctioning bodies have to use this app. I can't remember the name of the app. When Joel was out here, he's like, "Hey, there's an app out there right now. New York State is using it. And every single bout that happens in New York gets recorded on this app." And it's something that I feel like needs to be done country-wide, probably worldwide, right? Like a universal kind of tracking system that's digital. Because a digital passbook would be great as well, because, we all know after COVID, how many people falsified a piece of paper saying that you got a shot that you didn't get to travel, right? Like you could just falsify a stamp, or you could falsify anything. And so,
Yeah.
But a digital booklet, and basically each athlete has like their fighter social security number, right? Like they have their own ID number, and that's your number for life. And if you lose your license, that's the number, you lose that number, and that number basically like is void if you like do something that's like a foul, or you miss weight a lot. Like all these things are tracked, and one of the like, and that's a good solution too. But the problem where the reality is, and what you said, Rudy, is there's like 10 sanctioning bodies, just in one state sometimes. And, you have sanctioning bodies all over the place. Arizona, I think, has 5 or 6 right now. And none of them want to work together, right? Because they want to be in charge. So if they submit to another one, and it's this whole power struggle thing. So what other solutions do you think would be ideal?
I mean, that's the challenge, right? Is that, everyone wants to be king, so they don't want to cooperate with the other person. If everyone, if say the top 10 sanctioning bodies in the country all agreed, it'd be pretty easy, right? So maybe it's the commission that needs to take over. The commission, if, like you said, if the commission every state required it, sanctioning bodies would have to fall in line. And I know it's on the top of my tongue too, because I had my fighter Sean compete in New York 3 times last year, and we had to go through it.
And he's killing it, by the way. Congratulations. He's going to be fighting on ONE FC against actually one of our old athletes that fought as a kid on Cyan Fight Productions on one of our first shows. He's fighting Tuzo, guys.
Yeah, Tuzo.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
Flyers.
Next week it's on. I leave. He's in Thailand already. One day. So excited about that. Yeah, it's good.
That's super cool.
Yeah, thank you.
He's been running through all the guys out here.
He's a monster.
He is a monster.
It's good. It's good to have natural power,
Right. Yeah.
Once you have that, it makes game plans pretty easy. Like, kick him as hard as you can. The problem solved.
That's pretty standard coaching right there. Just kick him as hard as you can, and good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's been killing it, man. Congratulations to you and your team. You guys have been doing great. Your athletes do really well at the U.S. Open as well. Every time you don't bring a big team, but they all very high quality athletes. Yeah, we love having you every year because it brings the caliber of the event up when you have quality athletes at the tournament. So yeah, thanks for coming out. I think I have an idea for a solution to this problem. Now, as a promoter, we as for a US Open hired, and I don't know if you know this, but we hired a person just to deal with he's a digital investigator, and I don't even know
forensics.
Digital forensic,
military grade forensic studying.
He did this for the Navy, and was it the Navy? Was it the Army? I think it was the Navy. And we found him. We were like, absolutely, we really want you to do this. And to be honest, the sandbagging has come to a screeching halt at our tournament because he caught a couple teams, deliberately. Because it's sometimes you can tell where the mistake is. They didn't really understand the rules but there was a team that deliberately was sandbagging, and we basically banned them in perpetuity. And we didn't really ban them. We banned the coach. So I was like, basically because there was a bunch of kids, and I just felt terrible that we have to ban kids because we all know it's not the kids, it's the parents, right? Like we all know that that's the case. So what do you think about maybe the solution is, and I'm spitballing with you here, Rudy, and I want to hear what you think. Maybe the solution is a third party that is not a sanctioning body, that's not the state governing body, but someone completely outside that would create this software for free. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the free part would be what would sell it, right? I mean, but if they were smart, like I'm gonna sell this to you guys because you guys desperately need it. But I mean, I think that is key, right? Is like a third party, outlet that you can go check and you don't have to worry about any sort of corruption or anything like that.
Right. And it's all out in the open. It's all open source, and somebody would just basically create it and give it away. And I mean, I don't know, obviously it would be like the Google of fighting, right? And that's What do
But
you
who's
think
gonna
about
give it
that
away?
idea?
Yeah, think about other bodies too, guys, that like deal with this, or my family, I grew up in senior healthcare, right? So you have like the nursing, board that comes and they do tests, they'll come in your home, check for all the things, write up any deficiencies and log them in the state's board book. That to me seems like the way that it probably should be done, is that there's an agency that has to handle the data. There has to be a data integrity piece there. It has to be impartial, which is why, nobody that's part of, a stakeholder in the community should have control over pushing their thumb on the scale, but that's how things become state, right? Is because the finance, it has to be funded somehow, and typically
Right.
that now becomes to taxpayers.
Well, you think
Well-
commission would, right? Because honestly, like the majority commission, like, oh, where's your license application? You're handing in a piece of paper, right? And they're like checking, like, you guys haven't updated to the '90s or late '90s yet, like. So it's like it would benefit them. It seems like it would streamline and make everything easier for everybody, right? Those commissions just have to kind of be willing to do it.
Yeah, there's another side to that. Looks like Tiago is going to rejoin here, but I was, thinking about how sometimes they don't want to get rid of those jobs, right? Because those are the jobs that are under appointment, and that's so and so's second cousin who is in that position, and if they get rid of that job, then that person's not eating, and so sometimes I feel like that's the reason the tech hasn't made its way into government so much. We'll save a lot of that discussion in my theories for another day. But
so I mean, that's just bureaucratic red tape, right? And then how can you keep the cronyism and good old boy system going, right? It's like, oh well, but maybe you train them to be able to enter data instead of write it down.
Well, if you try to do that, and we've worked with other bodies, it's really hard to retool someone to what they've been doing the same way. And you probably deal with this as a coach. They come from another camp and they've been taught a certain way to do something. Getting them to retrain, reprogram, pretty difficult. So, but bring it back to sandbagging. So like technology, maybe that's one element. What other things could be done? I mean, we've gone to some lengths with the forensic and the investigation because it was a problem, so we took it to another level. But what other things do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think the community as a whole needs to keep itself accountable, right? Like, we all know each other, and we're all the way across country and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it's amazing to me that people still try to get away with that, and obviously it's one thing, like you said, if you forget, like, oh, how many exhibition smoker / PMT things have I had? Was it 4 or 5, right? Like, that's hard, that's easy to let go, right? But when you're like, oh, I'm not going to count any of those type of things, and then I'm going to go into a novice division, right? That is difficult. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I would let my peers that I know well get away with that. I would say, hey man, like, I know your girl has like 13 quote unquote, experience, exhibitions or whatever, and you're fighting a girl that's 0-1.
Yeah,
Like,
the interesting thing about you saying that is that's how we kind of originally started with the concept of a community policing model, where we thought, well, if I'm coach A and I know that coach B's athletes are in my division and I look at their record and I look and clearly that's a discrepancy from what I know, then we'll report, the other team, at least look into it. We can help decide if that was true or not. And now we've had to go to the length of, putting a data forensic scientist on this, and I mean, it's another level that a lot of things actually aren't doing. A lot of other industries probably need to do this, but we've had to go to that length to prevent this. So
it's been great. Like the guy that we got is like a hunter, man. He finds anybody that signs up. The first step is he's already like on day one. he's already looking up everything, and then he's like, well, found this, found that. He just gives us all the information. And
But there's an extra cost to it, right? And that consumes cost to, the athletes do pay for it, where essentially, it'd be nice if they didn't have to, would be.
Yeah, man.
I would I would prefer to do a tournament or understand that I got to pay a little bit more if I knew people were going to extra lengths to make sure that there was integrity, right? I mean, because
Right.
I can't research everything. I don't know if they, did a smoker in Oklahoma or something like that,
or fight in Thailand or fight in some other country. Like
or down to when did they replace the ring canvas the last time? How about that question? We talk about, some of that. We have standards that people may not know about to really keep it safe for people.
So moving forward, so are you still on the passbook, or do you think like you've evolved your solution?
I mean, I think you got to go digital, right?
Right.
So you have a digital, maybe you do both, right? Until it can go out. You have a physical passbook and a digital to back it up, right? Because someone's going to lose the passbook, or like you said,
there was so I put up sorry, am I cutting out or are you cutting out?
I think Rudy is for just a second there.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought you were done. Go ahead, Rudy.
I am done. I just don't remember what
So sorry, man. So some of the people, we're having some technical difficulties today. Holy cow. This is probably a peak of technical difficulty.
No, it's all the sanctioning bodies don't want us talking about sandbagging control.
Whenever we talk about something controversial, I've noticed that shit just goes south. So I had posted basically a questionnaire for people, and I wanted to read some of them, and we can kind of spitball the reality of these solutions, right? Did you get to read any of those, Rudy?
I didn't.
Okay. So one of them was, the first one was have an official app that all organizations use and organizers input their fight number and smoker. Now, the problem with that is if the fighters input their fight number and smoker, that's, we got to start from somewhere, right? So they have to put their input, but then what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's the point, right? Like, the problem with sandbagging is that someone is not putting the right information in there, and it's not coming from the organization, right? So, generally, I think most adults, for the most part, are going to have integrity. It's, unfortunately, I think it goes down to the coaches. It always goes down to leadership, right?
Right.
If the leadership is like, you don't need to count that little thing over there, then they're gonna be the fighter's gonna say okay, But if you're like, hey man, you got to count the whole thing, make sure everything is on there, then they're gonna do it. So, obviously, I think what you guys did. I mean, lifetime banning sucks, right? Maybe you can't do it next year.
People make mistakes, but it's what's qualified. Like how bad does it have to be for a lifetime?
We can't get into specifics either, but if anybody knew what the committee when it was reviewed, what they came across, it was astounding and malicious intended.
So you have to basically prove malicious intent, right?
For something like that. There should be some sort of strikes, right? Like first strike, you get a fine, or a second strike, you can't compete during this next event, or you get suspended for 6 months. Third strike is a year, or so. I mean, there's got to be some accountability if people aren't going to be accountable to themselves. I think, that third party app is the key.
I think that so I think we have a solution. There's a couple of people that I'm gonna read these off because there's some funny ones. There were some good ones. One person said, "Stop allowing people who have competed in pro in Thailand to fight amateur in the States." That's an obvious one. But the problem is, how do you stop them, right? Because that's the whole thing. So whoever said that,
and check our last podcast.
Might have missed the point. It's the problem is not stopping the problem is stopping them from lying about it, right? One
So,
person said chop
is
off
there a
one
division?
finger.
Yeah, don't you have a division for that? Isn't A class kind of
We have a
allowed?
pro division actually now. We have a pro division. So we have a class and we have a pro. And we
I mean, I
talked
think it
about our
also
last
depends
podcast.
on what quality fight they had in Thailand. Was it a tuk-tuk driver or is it a
Right.
real fight? You know what I'm
Was
saying?
it?
So
And how do you define that scientifically, right? Like, there's some tuk-tuk drivers have about 40 fights, man. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Like, they're making some
absolutely.
money.
Beware of which tuk-tuk driver you get in the ring with. But I mean, I've seen obviously things when like, someone goes over there on holiday to train for a few weeks, and the camp goes, "Oh, we'll get you a fight,"
Yeah.
and
We'll
all of a
fight you
sudden,
at the bar in Pattaya.
yeah, at the bar, and all of a sudden the Thai guy is like exhausted after 2 rounds, can't barely stand up. There might be something going on there.
Right. The next one we got was to chop off a finger. That would just every time somebody sandbags, chop off a finger. Another one was separate brackets from people who are hobbyists and those who train full time but not pro. I don't know. There's like a million problems with that because
If they're not pro, they are hobbyists essentially,
that's
right?
exactly it. Let's see. Call them out, coach, athlete, move them up. When we did that, we actually started a
Involuntary.
whistleblower.
Yep,
So
involuntary moves too. If we find we can move you. So
the most popular answer was banned for a year. And that was like everybody. I remember that when that came out, I posted it and everybody was like, that's the one. That's the one to do. And the last one was use smooth comp to register for events in order to track athletes' combat history. So, and like we talked about using one, I guess.
it doesn't work when it's not when other people have to pay for it. You can't force people to buy access to 8 to 10 different softwares. It just can't be that way.
And that's the problem, right? Like, I regularly deal with probably like 3 sanctioning bodies at a regular, right? And each one has their own database, and they're saying, "Yeah,
Right.
this is your passport right here." But I'm like, but that does not transfer to the other one.
Right.
It's interesting. For the first time, I got a matchmaker sent me that smooth comp from one of my MMA guys. And
Yeah.
I'm like, smooth comp. I never used it, but it listed all his jujitsu experience, all his jujitsu tournaments. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, well, now at least I know what level of jujitsu he is for
Right.
my amateur MMA guy, but it needs to be combined with everything else.
I believe that jiu-jitsu has a software like this now, like with everybody's stuff, but I don't know if jiu-jitsu, and I'm not very familiar, maybe you might be more familiar than I am. IBJJF are they like the ultimate in databases, or are there separate databases that everybody's kind of putting into?
I don't know. I don't really do that much either. I'm like, you want to do jiu-jitsu tournament? Go ahead.
Good
I
luck.
just got that.
It's
I
not my
literally just got that
expertise.
food comp link just the other day for one of my amateur MMA fighters. So I'm like, oh, it kind of tied into the topic. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it goes back to and what Brandon says, like, well, it has to be a third entity, right? Like, I'm not going to pay for 5 different sanctioning bodies websites to get access to. Like, why am I even doing that as a coach, right? I mean, obviously I want to be smart, but it's not fair. Like, give me the information, and like you want me to fight for your organization or whatever, give me all the information you have. I shouldn't have to pay for it.
Exactly. I mean,
and especially when the AAU models are around, right? For like decades, there's other models that have been tracking this stuff. And even our software, that's why we have a league for league management. We know all the verified results from our events. We just can't tell you once it gets outside. We don't know what truly happened because it's another sanctioning, another place, another state, another, how do you even verify that that's even accurate? It's really a challenging situation.
I like I like the idea. Maybe we might come up with it ourselves. Maybe US Open might come up with a free software that will and we'll just give it away. I think. What if so what right? Like just give it away. Just give it away to people.
Well, they could
And
register for free, right? They'd
and
have
they
to
can
be able
register for
to.
free. Let them
Yep.
let everybody like it'll be the ultimate database, right? Because what was the original database was what? It was SureDog. SureDog gave
Yeah,
it away for
so,
free.
now it's Tapology essentially.
Oh, is
what
it
you get.
Tapology now? I mean, I'm
Now
not in
now
the
you get Tapology the most, but they're up to like they'll have fighters records wrong all the time, and I'm like, you better
right.
contact these dudes and tell them you got 2 more wins. So it's not 100% for sure.
That's
not
what we call
100%.
data integrity. And for everybody too, like if you look at like voter data, for instance, that stuff is outdated, so like years outdated sometimes. And that's, you know, something that everybody keeps track of, registers, updates themselves. It's self-reported and it's completely inaccurate. So, you know, we have some problems to address
Even
as
our
far as
government
how,
can't get it together. I mean,
yeah.
shit. How are we
No.
gonna do it?
Well,
I mean,
actually, I would argue the
data-
contrary. They never do. And we
Data
always are the
becomes
ones who bail it out.
outdated. Data
Question
becomes
for you guys.
outdated as soon as you collect it.
Do you find that it's more adult sandbagging or youth sandbagging?
That's a good question. I think what we've seen most is youth sandbagging. We have seen adults, but you know, Ryan, what would you say about that? I think you're the one that deals with most of it. You and Cara.
So we've been tackling this issue, really dealing with this problem since 2015. And all the stuff that we talked about today is the reason why we still haven't figured out a solution. You know, we talked about the fact that even if you register for 5 different people's databases, who's going to go back and cross-reference all those things for every single fighter you have in your fight team? Nobody's going to do that. And who's going to make sure that each one of those organizations is keeping their data up to date? And, you know, as soon as you collect data, is what I said, it becomes already outdated once you collect it. So,
Exactly.
and you have to have somebody full-time job to stay on top, going to be behind. They're still going to be reactionary. So one of the things that we did was, you know, in once we hired a digital investigator, a forensic, we create accountability because we've on a system model, an honest try for a number of years. And it's proven that it really was a failure. Like most of the time people did the right thing. Most of the time people were on, like 80% of people going to go above and beyond, 10% aren't going to follow the rules no matter what. And so we're focusing more on the 10% knuckleheads who aren't going to follow the rules no matter what. We've codified a set of a code of conduct, which covers really all the things that you're not supposed to be doing, including lying about your bout record and sandbagging, what we call it. And it also, you know, puts in writing what happens if you do it. So there is a due process system. So it's not just we can just point the finger at you and then, you know, swing the hammer down. There is a due process where you have a chance to answer against complaints. And the complaints can come from internally, stuff that we find. It can come from our investigator. Platform is built right into our website. You go on usmuaythaiopen.com, you click around in there under I think FAQ and support, and you'll see right there in the drop down menu, you're going to see the code of conduct violation reporting system. In there, you'll get a link that's going to take you to a 16-page document that outlines exactly how we adjudicate some of these issues and the appeals process. So we really make it like above and beyond fair. So like even if you are accused of sandbagging, you have your day in court, so to speak, where you can present your arguments and it'll be, you know, presented in front of an impartial board for how the penalties, right? So we haven't had to ban a lot of people But I will kind of shed some light on why we banned a particular coach, effectively a particular team. And this team, we caught numerous instances, and it was a youth team where they lied about their bout record. You know, they didn't report a lot of experience that they had, and they even went so far as to fabricate actual medals, counterfeit medals, right, for our event, and give them to their team, and then publicize and take pictures telling the whole world that they won gold medals at our event. And they put this out on social media, and of course they got a lot of likes about it, but it was a complete lie. And like, can you imagine like an adult coach
Wait.
doing this?
Wait, I gotta. So they after your event, they went back home and had their own medals.
I got one better.
They brought them to the event.
They made the event. They made the medals ahead of time, and gave
and then they did them at the event.
At the event,
Took photos at the event to make
with
it look
gold medals.
legitimate.
It was all planned out in advance.
But if they lost, like, what are those? What are they teaching their kids, man? That's horrible.
Exactly,
Like,
and that's why we banned the coach. Exactly right. Exactly right. And so that we were so upset because we were like, man, what are we gonna do? Because these are just kids. You know what I mean? Like, they're just kids, and we got to teach these kids that what their coach is doing is wrong.
It violates
ban
all of
the
the
coach.
tenets of the sport that we love.
So
you can't
we
let it
told
go.
them that they can compete at our show, but the coach is not allowed on premises. On premises. I don't even want him in the audience. And I obviously we never saw him again. But
was it shame in the eyes during the photos? Like, I can't imagine.
They're smiling. As a matter of fact, they even try to steal belts. We caught them trying to steal belts.
Way.
Yeah,
That's
man,
hard.
it was
We caught them
insane.
in our storage trying to steal awards.
Yeah.
So it's wild, but you know, and this is like the 10% we're talking about.
Yeah,
who just
I mean, this is the 1% of the 10%.
Yeah,
because
this is
like
the worst of the worst. I'm
beyond.
that is going. I mean, that's one thing. Like not disclosing, you know, some exhibition smokers that you have, but like, hey, we won, and that's pretty ballsy though. Like, hey, we won. We're gonna say that we won, even though people can look at my social media.
But as furious,
I wish I was that confident.
As furious as we were, right? So, and this is what I'm most proud of, right? As infuriating, right, as it was, and we're like, you know, we should sue them, and like that, we had options to do a whole lot of things. And what we did was, we fell back on the code of conduct that we spent so much time developing, and we said, no, we're going to use this code of conduct. We're going to charge this individual with certain violations. We're going to give them a chance, right? Give them a right, create a right for them to defend themselves and to be heard, right? We issued a letter to this person and their team. We outlined the charges in writing, and we gave them, there's a certain amount of time that they have to respond and to decide whether they want to have a hearing and be judged by, you know, member. And we would put together a committee of their peers to hear the case, right? So it wouldn't just be you have to prove to us. It'd be, you know, some third-party people who are not connected that you would be able to explain yourself. And they did not respond to the request. And so their time ran out. And so the decision was what it was. So they didn't fight it. But, you know, that's the program that we have in place. So, you know, I'm really proud of that program. And I think that I'm still a little hesitant. I'm back and forth about one writer, commenter mentioned about, you know, basically putting people on blast, right? And for that to be a deterrent, so let the whole world know that this person is a cheater and a liar, right? And I'm about kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out on that. I'm more leaning as time goes on to more 1 foot in on the process, so that if you do get caught, violating the more serious rules, at least maybe not the little knickknack ones, but the more serious, ethical type of things that would be publicized, at least found somewhere, either on our website or in your player profile or something
Yeah,
like
like a deficiency notice, right? Should be
right,
on
so
there.
that other people, so other sanctioner organizations and whoever you are, if you're just if you're a fight promoter someplace, you might get curious and you might Google their name, right? And it might pop up. One of like our website might show up on your search result, and you can click on that and you'd be like, whoa, look at this. This person was found guilty of blah 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 at the 2020 whatever US Open Spring Championships. That's very interesting. And so it just gives a little bit more of an insight as to who these people are. So we are, we have to bring that obviously to our internal committees to vote on something like that. But that is something that we also thought about to add that level of accountability.
I think a lot of people don't know that we have those many levels of, I would say, what would that be? Like
Checks and balances,
checks
accountability.
and balances. Like we have a lot of checks and balances over the years. Every time we've run into a situation, including this one, that now we have to create a system for it. And that way, that it's fair and it's balanced, and we can make a decision that's fair and balanced and just, right? But man, like that would be one of those situations where it was just so blatant and out of control. It was just like, I don't think I want these people here. Like, I think it would hurt everyone if these people were here. I don't care how many people they were bringing.
And
What I
again, it
mean?
was the leadership too. It wasn't, the athletes. We didn't necessarily consider that they, obviously none of them participated in the discussion, I don't believe, but we definitely hold the leadership accountable in these situations.
But there was a culture that we did notice, and you
Yeah.
can tell this anytime you go to a tournament and you watch other teams, just watch them. There is a culture, right? Every organization, every team has a culture. And unfortunately, with this group, that culture of win at all costs, even if we have to lie, cheat, and steal, you can sense that in these young people. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in the attitudes and the way they carry themselves. That had definitely trickled down. And these guys, I'll tell you this, most of America, you will see these people out there competing against them. They're actually really, really good, which is a shame because they didn't really have to cheat. They're actually really talented. However,
That's the saddest part, Rudy.
Big
That's the
team
saddest
too.
part.
big team, very well known. They're extremely well known, very popular, all right? And they have a lot of followers, not only in America, but also around the world. So
it's funny because, generally, Muay Thai culture is like, it's not if you're undefeated or not, it's how many fights you have, right? Like
Right.
that's generally what that is important, right? Usually in boxing and MMA, it's like your record is what people want to look at, right? Like, oh, you're 20-0, like that means so much in those sports where it's not supposed to mean as much in our sport. In Muay Thai, it's supposed to be your experience, right? Like how many fights you have. So for them to be so that overly aggressive on making sure they get every win and being undefeated, like that's just, I don't know.
It was weird.
Yeah.
Well, they know that there's no central record. They know they're just exploiting this gaping hole, this loophole that we have in the sport. That at the end of the day, somebody might remember it this year, maybe next year, but at some point, no one's going to talk about it anymore, and that's going to be the end of it. Right?
Question:
They can still hang their trophy on their wall and brag about it, and that's what people will remember.
What was it? Exhibition fights or fights that they were not disclosing?
Oh man, it was all of the above.
Yeah,
So
there was pro fights undisclosed. A ton of things.
It was a lot of fights. It was a lot
everywhere.
A lot.
And I wanted to add too, Rudy is, and to everybody who's watching, this sport is relatively small, right? It's relatively small. And when you have this many athletes, you know, that you're removing from an event, it costs tremendously the event too. So they also take advantage of that fact that they know that, and I believe that was even in one of the comments. We can't actually disclose what that was, but more or less that we'll take, you know, you want to lose this money essentially, you know, and
Hell, kind of
they
his
knew.
negotiating chip. It's like,
Mhm.
you sure you want to lose like 15 athletes? Which is a lot of money for us, right? So it definitely moves the
Yeah.
needle.
Yeah, and we'll fall on that sword is basically what I'm saying to the community. You know, we said, no, your money is no good here, essentially.
Oh, we did fall on that sword.
We
We sure did.
Well, that's noble, and it's, you know, it's interesting because it seems like, you know, like the top tournaments, you know, they want all information, right? They want, you know, all your exhibition fights, everything. You know, there are tournaments out there that don't look at those exhibitions fights as experience. You don't need to put them down,
That's
and that's a
experience,
huge
man.
part, right? Then they could just go right over to that other tournament or so that doesn't look into all that stuff and rack up wins or whatever if they
But
want to
then,
sandbag.
how do you feel, like about a tournament like that? Like when you're looking at tournaments, Rudy, like, and you know this about one tournament over the other, like, have you seen the quality of athlete as far as the caliber of a competitor kind of diminish in those tournaments, or what do you see in those tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I listed one that I wasn't going to do again. I mean, it's part of what it is, right? It's like, okay, so, and it goes across the boards. Like generally, that they're not like only Muay Thai. There's maybe several different styles, and so, you know, it just makes it very confusing. Like, how are they scoring these things? And then if you don't take in, um, that experience that is necessary, you know, that differentiates you, then it, you know, you have mismatches, right? Like, and
Huge.
that's what you guys are trying to avoid. I mean, I know, you know, I checked the fights. I moved one of my fighters up from B class to A class because there had no one in his weight class. I moved him up in weight and in division because I'm like, this kid paid his ticket and, you know, wants to fight. So okay,
Sure.
and you know, he was already, you know, didn't have as many fights as a person on paper, and then I found out, you know, someone told me, oh, this person had 20 exhibition fights, and then I asked them, and they were like, well, it's only 7, but I was like, okay, that's still 7 more than my my
That's
kid
a
had
lot.
on
That's
top
a
of.
lot.
And you know, that's a larger discussion whether these things are, you know, are fights or not. They're more than they're definitely more of a fight than not a fight.
Right.
Definitely, and definitely has a difference in the experience, right? You know, maybe before the pandemic, maybe a year or so before the pandemic, I put one of my in it was a local show, and my girl was 1-0, I think, right, and had maybe 2 smokers, and then she was matched up with a girl who had like 7 smokers, but was no fights, and I was like, okay, let's go, and it was, you know, it was clear like that girl had 7 almost fights, and she was way more polished. Like she had just way more. She had 3 times the experience of my girl, and I was like,
Right.
oh, that's that's something I need to take
That
in
makes
account.
a difference. I think that makes a huge difference. And I mean, that's why we kind of count those. You know, a lot of people kind of fight us on it, like, oh, that's a half fight, or, and I'm like, no, that's a fight. If I had a kid that never set foot in any competition area, and then I put up against a kid that had only whatever you call them, PKBs, for example, 7 of them, right? Let's say 7. I mean, that would be, you like you said, it's a clear advantage on coaching, on those adjustments on the fly, like how it's gonna feel.
Well, and we also
Like,
talk a lot about. I just wanted to add that we talk a lot about the audience factor, right? In what counts against experience, because in one environment where it's very controlled, right? You don't have, all the screaming and the yelling and everybody saying knees, 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 right, all the time. It's very different in that environment. Once you get in front of the audience, changes your nerve dynamic, a lot of the other things. And if you start getting comfortable in that, then that's going to give you another edge against the competition. Rudy?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all those things counts. I mean, personally, I let we used to have smokers in California before they were deemed illegal, and then it was monetized, right? And the community, we did great with smokers. The community, policed itself.
We
'Cause,
self-police. That was the always fun going out.
like if I put my kid in a smoker and he put and they put someone with way more experience, he beats the crap out of my kid. Me and those coach are gonna have words, and we know each other, so it just didn't happen, right? So you get a lot more of that now, right?
And now the community is kind of growing to a size that maybe we don't all know each other anymore.
Yeah,
right?
it's getting more of that, like that, especially. Well, the smokers would be in your area, right? Like I'm not going to travel for a smoker. But now there's opportunity, like almost every weekend, to
Everywhere.
get, and
Nice.
that's great, right? But the problem is, like, if it goes down to what you guys were talking about, like if it's not included in their experience, in what we're talking about or matching, and they're not included that experience, and things are not fair, not even. So, I don't know. It needs to be counted. I'm glad you guys count it. I know other tournaments count everything. Um, I actually was, thinking about bringing one of my MMA guys to a tournament this summer, and I'm like, well, like you're a jiu-jitsu dude. You've won all you're like 4-0 with submissions only. You're not very good striker, but you have 4 fights, and I'm gonna put you in a couple of exhibition fights. You're gonna be in B class, dude, and you're gonna have to like deal
You're
with
gonna have
it,
to, yeah,
right? But the
absolutely.
truth is, like, he's not. He's more like a C class striker, but
Right.
he has
Well,
experience in
jiu-jitsu
fight.
doesn't really, I wouldn't count jiu-jitsu as experience for Muay Thai.
Well, I'm talking. He
But if
has.
he did MMA,
Yeah, he has MMA, but
ah,
he wins all his fights with
oh, I see.
right. Like
He
he's
did them
not.
all submission.
It's like it's like a little bit more old school MMA style, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
scrap you, but that he needs to work on his striking, so he needs to do some Muay Thai fights. So,
absolutely.
but my mindset is like, if you're an MMA guy, then it's not really going to hurt you, you know,
Right.
if you lose this fight. It's
Nobody's looking at his Muay Thai record in MMA.
and the thing is, here in California, like I could totally sandbag my MMA fighters. I could have them do 20 exhibition fights, and the amateur organization in California doesn't look at those at all. They
That's
just look
wild.
at MMA.
That's
So
wild.
I'm surprised more coaches don't do that. But generally, MMA fighters are different than Muay Thai fighters. Generally, people come in the gym for MMA like, oh, I want to fight. Where,
That's true.
Muay Thai is like, oh, I want to learn how, I want to get in shape and kick and punch stuff. And then they go, oh, maybe I'll try this fighting stuff, right? So a little bit different mentality.
Right.
And most MMA guys don't want to do much amateur anyway. They're like,
Right.
"Free
They want to go straight to
fight,
pro on
like,
their second fight.
it's $500. So it's a little different mentality.
That's
But yeah, I
true.
mean, they could get away with it a
That's
lot here in
true.
California.
Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate that the system allows it because it'll definitely happen now.
Yeah.
Like over time, people are gonna go, wait a second, like I can sandbag and get some easy fights, get my record up, and then I'll be the stronger guy in the lower divisions and stuff. Rudy, we're gonna wrap up here. Do you have any final thoughts on, obviously you just expressed a bunch of thoughts, but what are your final thoughts on, what do we do about sandbagging in Muay Thai? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think what we all kind of kicked around, the key is some sort of third body data, uh, uh, or website that we can all go to refer, right? But it's going to take, either a mandate by the commissions to do it, or really like the heads of each of these sanctioning bodies and tournaments to go, you know what, we want to grow the sport. You know, it benefits us all if we grow the sport, right?
Right.
If we help each other on that level, at least on that level, like, you know, it's just so we can verify records, right? Like,
Absolutely.
why wouldn't you want to do that? The key is finding a third party person that wants to do it, and there's no fee. So someone from those sanctioning bodies or promotions aren't making the money, and the others aren't, right? If we're able to do that, I think it'll help grow the sport, I think, a lot faster.
Exponentially. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree.
Until then, we have to you know, go on the honor system, and you know, unfortunately, like you guys pointed out, not
There's
everyone.
that 10%. There's that 10% that just don't care about honor or integrity at all. They just want those wins. Rudy, thank you so much for your time. It was a great time chatting with you, spitballing some ideas. Hey, you never know. We might actually come up with it ourselves. I mean,
Let's go.
we've been kind of spitballing that idea around a little bit. And you know, I don't, it's going to be, it would be something that it's extremely expensive, right? Like, you know, data entry and anything data Brandon can talk about is expensive, time consuming. And, you know, it's going to come up with some glitches that we're going to have to work on. But, you know, I'm always down to do something different to kind of build a community. And I appreciate your input and time. Thank you guys. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. We're gonna be recapping a little bit on our last episodes, and we're gearing up a little bit for the U.S. Open here in a week or two. So tune in next week. It's gonna be a fun one, guys. Have a good night.
Chalk D cup.